Hi, my name is Chris Seiler. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the Sun Prairie Area School District. And today I'm going to be presenting on an agenda item for the May 28th, 2024 school board meeting. The title for this agenda item is 2024-2025 Employee Handbook Updates. So every year we do provide an annual look at our handbooks. These handbooks involve each one of our employee groups, and then there's a handbook that is specific for all employee groups that's consistently held for all of them. Because each one of the employee groups have some differences within them, there is an individual handbook for each one of the employee groups, and then again, one that's kind of all-encompassing of all employees that is consistently held for no matter what group an employee is in. These are regularly reviewed every year. I provide items to our employee work groups. The employee work groups, again, are employees that are specific to each employee group. So there's a support staff work group, there's a professional educator work group, there's an administrative work group, there's an administrative support work group that all talk through handbook changes throughout the year. So there are times that it's a little atypical for mid-year changes, but sometimes there are mid-year changes that are more one-offs. But typically we do try to bring a large amount of handbook changes or significant ones at one time every year, typically in April or May. So that's what this is. And I'm not going to talk in specifics right now because I'm going to flip over to another screen that talks about specific handbook changes, but you can see them listed here with the general ones. We're looking at the all-employee handbook. We're proposing an addition called the stay recognition stipend. Administrative handbook, we're looking at removing severance pay. Administrative support, removing resignation or severance pay. And then some new language or credit reimbursement or professional growth. Professional educator handbook, removal of some leaves that no longer are applicable, or we have very similar leaves already in our all-employee handbook. In addition of elementary school special area department chairs, separation pay being removed again. We'll talk about that and how that's going to be flipped into stay recognition stipends for all employees, and then a revision of the health and reimbursement account for our support staff in retirement. Just to kind of give you a quick overview, all these proposed changes will have little to no financial impact in that the handbook changes that are proposed are not associated with a cost, or in the cases of the elementary school special area department chairs or the stay recognition stipend, those funds are reallocated from other funds to kind of create again, no or little financial impact to those. And then you can kind of look through the attachments, and we do recommend approval of these proposed handbook changes, which I will talk through in more specifics right now. So I'm going to flip over to another tab. I'm going to start with with our administrative handbook. The administrative handbook right now that we're looking at is we're focused on just one area, and that's removing the severance pay concept where unused PTO, anybody that is after 2 years of employment in our system, and you'll see this language consistently throughout, they are provided a payout at resignation, not retirement. We are not talking about retirement and administrative, professional educator, or administrative support in this area. So this is just removing the idea of severance pay for somebody resigning after 2 years of employment with us. And the new language we'll talk about with all employees here in just a second. When we think about credit reimbursement for administrative support, there is current language in there that talks about specific amounts of money, $1,000 per year, and carrying up to $3,000 for credit reimbursement in college classes. We felt like it was important. There's very similar language in an administrative handbook around this for reimbursement of professional growth. And we want to make sure that this money is also being consistently held in much like the administrative handbook, where it's not just about college tuition. It's also that It allows people to participate in national, state, or local conference expenses. And again, so we just added that language, and I'll kind of highlight it right here. When we look at so for further professional education or registration or participation in national, state, or local expenses. So you can see that that kind of has been added to that. Again, resignation severance pay is removed from that language, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the all-employee handbook. For professional educators, we have an area in there called family emergency leave. So we're going to talk about a couple leaves that no longer really make sense to have in there. So family emergency leave is in the professional educator handbook. That's the only handbook it's in. In our all-employee handbook, we already have something called temporary medical leave. These are both local leave options. They are not like national required like family medical leave. This is a temporary medical leave to help us support locally a staff member that might be going through something that's a little unique and it doesn't fit really in the federal medical leave parameters. So since those two are very similar, it didn't make sense to keep that in one handbook and then have another handbook do something very similar. The elementary school department chairs for 14.02, there is no current language for these. These department chairs actually support, if you think about it, it's a professional learning team within the special area like art, PE, music, health. These department chairs are set up similar to our high school department chairs in that they have expectations about working through curriculum, working with their professional learning team, delivering communication with them, and working with that team to implement whatever changes might be happening at a K-5 system. And then also working through budget items, scheduling items, working with administrators to specifically based on their PLT with any changes that need to be made. These duties are for one person and they represent art, PE, health, like I was saying. And what's different about this group is that typically there's one art teacher, one music teacher, one PE teacher, maybe two in a building. So they aren't always together like our typical grade level teams were. So this was a way to kind of wire them together from building to building. And you can see that these funds used to pay these stipends for the people that are in these roles is a reallocation of building funds to support this work. So each one of the buildings collaborated together, provided an equal amount of money from their building funds to support these roles. So it was a cost neutral move. And then sabbatical leave is in the professional educator handbook. Again, this is similar to actually something called career exploration leave, which we removed last year. And in the current climate that we're in, to provide a year leave and have a challenge in hiring staff members, it just made sense since career exploration leave is very similar to this leave that consistently were not allowed for an employee group. And again, this only shows up in the professional educator handbook. And then finally, separation pay again in the professional educator handbook would be removed because we were going to a different structure to be more proactive in supporting our employees instead of paying unused PTO for employees that resign after 2 years of employment. The next handbook is support staff, and again, severance pay is removed. The one difference that's being changed in connection with removing severance pay. So in removing severance pay from each one of the employee groups, we typically spend on average about $100,000 on employees that are leaving our system after 2 years. They resign and then we pay PTO out for all of those employees. That $100,000 was used in order to think about how do we provide stay recognition stipends, which we'll talk about more in a second. And we also knew, as each one of the employee groups was working on this, to give their own perspective. And then we brought a small group together where I had a representative from each of the employee groups talk through this or give the opportunity to provide feedback from their perspectives. We knew we also had to address our support staff health reimbursement account amounts that are provided at retirement for our support staff. So part of the work and the collaboration between the employee groups, which I really appreciated, was that we knew that we had to figure out a way to better support our retiring support staff employees. So as you can see in section 15.03, there is a health reimbursement account that talks about at employment, there's $3,600 provided to a support staff member into an HRA, a health reimbursement account. What we did, using some of the funds that we are spending on average for severance, we addressed our health reimbursement account at retirement for support staff. So as you can see, we moved from $3,600 to $5,000. That's A here in the new language. So we went to $5,000, and then any year after 20 years of local experience in our system, we provide $250 more into that HRA. So basically 20 times 250 is 5,000. That's the base, no matter what. If you retire as a support staff member from our system, it's $5,000 into an HRA. If you work above 20 years, for each one of those years, it's $250 more. The incentive leave is similar to the language that's up here in the upper left. We just move that from the severance part into this just to capture it, because that's still in play. D is also, again, going from the severance pay idea up here that kind of mixed in the idea of resignation, retirement. We put this into the retirement language. We upped the amount to $40 per day for accumulated paid time off days. And we took those $40 and then up to a maximum of 145 days, whatever is left in PTO, that will also be put into that HRA plan. So again, we increase the amount per day for all employees. It doesn't matter how many years you've been in our system. If you retire, $40 of unused accumulated paid time off per day for up to 145 days gets put in an HRA plan. And as I said earlier with the situation report, all of this is offset by using the funds that are shifted from the severance pay of each one of the employee groups to support this, which we typically have about 8 people retire per year for our support staff. Okay, so now there is attachments in the situation report that go a little deeper into the stay recognition stipend and how it was created. I'll give a quick overview here. And if you read the notes in the presentations, you can kind of see how we got to this point. So stay recognition pay. So as you can see, there is no language, obviously, in the all-employee handbook. But by removing the severance and separation pay that's out there for anybody in our system that resigns after 2 years of employment, this isn't about retiring, this is about resigning. Once they leave, they are paid out currently for unused PTO. The proposal is taking that separation severance pay and using it for more proactive supporting our employees that are staying here through a stay recognition stipend. So again, the language is pretty simple and straightforward. We considered a lot of data, as we say on the right with the notes. We considered like what's the average amount of payout, which is typically around $100,000 in our system for all employees that resign and would pay out unused PTO per year. The eventual structure we knew had to fit within that budgetary parameter, and we did that using average amounts of people resigning after 2 years. Most school districts do not provide an unused PTO payout when resigning. Again, during retirement, that's more consistent, but not for resigning. And the work group used completed local years of service to consider stay recognition to understand the completed years of service trends seen among employees. And then as far as how do we consider the milestones that I'll describe in a second, um, we we used our structure that we actually do with some of our more mementos that we provide, blankets, stuff like that. Um, Instead of doing the mementos, we really focused on how do we do a compensation focused stay recognition, starting at 10 years for every 5 years up to 35 years of service. So now I'm going to go back to the language. So as I said, this is focused on local years of completed service while employed in the Sun Prairie Area School District. The payment of the stipend would occur in the second pay period of September of the following school year that somebody completes the years that are in the table below. In the case where an employee was hired after January 1st, local years of service may be recorded as 0.5 years of service, meaning someone who has completed 14.5 years of local service must complete one more year to get 15 or more completed local years of service. And then, as a reminder, your long leaves of absence do not count towards local years of service, which is similar to how the district calculates retirement years of service. And then I'm going to get this a little bigger again, just so you can see the table better. The groups worked really hard on this to try to figure out like what's the appropriate increments, what's the appropriate amounts. And as you can see, for when somebody completes 10 years, the following September, they'll get a $525 stipend. At 15, they'll get $725, and you can see it scales up from there. Again, this work was a year long this last year, and actually a little longer, because actually this concept came up prior to COVID, when we used to have a group called Workforce Excellence, which it was like a large group that had all employee groups. And when this discussion took place, there was a lot of support for moving from a separation severance pay structure to a more stay recognition stipend or retention bonus, whatever you want to call it. We came up with a concept of stay recognition stipend because of that conversation. And now the groups really worked hard all year to collaborate together within their employee work group and between the employee work groups all at the same time. So I'm very proud of that. And again, with all these proposal around handbook, this is the one that probably changed the most of how we would move forward with supporting our employees. And tonight on May 28th, I'm looking for approval of the proposal. And thanks for your time. And once again, the attachments that are there do have presentations that go into this specific stay recognition stipend a little bit further if you want to have more information than I've shared here. Thank you.